Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Fundación Alternativas. This is going to be an exciting interview to our ambassador, the European Union's ambassador to China. He's now in Beijing. He's Jorge Toledo. This is an interview on many issues that are in the focus right now. Among them, the European Union-China current relationship, the Indo Pacific strategy of the European Union towards this broad region, and other issues and conflicts in the area like Taiwan and many others. I would like to first thank you, Jorge, for your time and welcome.
Thank you very much, Vicente. Delighted to be with you. Good morning in Europe, good evening almost in Beijing, and with very good weather in Beijing and no pollution, so it's fine. Good spring.
Congratulations then. There's a lot of progress has been made in Beijing then. So, Jorge, you have been in this position as a EU ambassador since September 2022. If I'm well informed. So it's almost 2 years now. You have had tough times because in 2019, 2020, 2021, the EU Commission and the President von der Leyen has been very tough on China, and the European Union has even labeled China as a systemic rival, not only a friend and a partner, but also not only a competitor, but also a systemic rival. We have moved from decoupling to the risking. I guess that you have witnessed this evolution in the last year, last 2 years. So my first question would be: is this time now for re-engaging with China? How is the political climate there in Beijing? Okay.
First of all, I've been here since September 22, and it was very tough at the beginning, but not because of what you said, but because I arrived here in the middle of the worst pandemic restrictions, and there was at the end of it, it was a bit chaotic. Nobody knew what to do. It had been over 3 years of pandemic restrictions. People were very tired, and it was a bit chaotic. But after the restrictions were lifted in January, life has little by little resumed. And I wouldn't say it's normal now, because I don't think the activity has reached pre-pandemic levels, but at least it's not as dystopic as it was when I arrived. I don't think in these years during the pandemic, the European Union has toughened its language about China, or its actions about China. It was in 2019 when the European Union decided to describe their relations with China, not to label, but to describe. This is not a labeling. This is not an accusation. This is not a strategy. It is a description of a relation which is multifaceted. We are partners. We are partners in things as important as global issues like fight against climate change. For instance, we are competitors. We have a competitive trade and investment relationship with many problems, and we are systemic rivals. This is not a label. We have different political systems. We have different narratives and different concepts about human rights. We have very strong differences in things like the Russian aggression in Ukraine. So it's not a strategy, it's not a label, it's just the reality. And this, by the way, has not changed. So in this few years, we have not changed. We have not gone from decoupling to de-risking, actually. We only have done and have announced de-risking. You know, our experience with the Russian aggression in Ukraine, when it came to energy, to gas supplies. Our experience with the pandemic, when we found that there was no paracetamol produced in Europe, and many other things, well, decided us to the risk, I mean, to not to depend too much on anybody, on any country. But it's a very small part of our trade where we want to de-risk. So we have never done decoupling. I would say that on the contrary, China is much closer to decoupling and has been so in the last at least 10 years than us. We are not decoupling. The Chinese, and we complain a lot about it, are decoupling more than us. And there are symptoms that are very concerning about that. And right now it's not improving.
So yeah, so the question would be how to re-engage in a virtuous cycle so that we don't block each other and we keep the relationship, the trade relationship open. I guess that this is one of your main concerns now, how to keep that relation open. But when it comes to the trade, we still, as Europeans, have important trade deficit in goods. It amounts to, if I'm not wrong, to more than 397 billion euros in 2022. And last year it stood at much less. So we have a less deficit now than in 2022. It was less deficit in 2023 than in 2022. So it has improved, if I'm not wrong. In 2023, numbers I have here is 291 billion trade deficit in goods vis-a-vis China. Beyond rhetoric, how complementary are the Europeans and the Chinese? Because there is much talk about the complementarity on global issues, on cooperating on climate change, which is something of a big concern for the Chinese as well. On nuclear weapons, you mentioned the conflict in Ukraine and the threat of the use of nuclear weapons. So the Chinese have been pacifiers on this. But again, we have this thing of the battery, the electric vehicles, the solar panels. So how much rhetoric and how much reality do we have now?
Well, to start with re-engaging, we have re-engaged with China after 3.5 years of no in-person meetings. Well, the president of the European Council came here even during the pandemic restrictions on the 1st of December 2022. And this started re-engagement and the resumption of our in-person meetings. The president of the Commission came in April, coincided with President Macron. And since then, and up to now, 4 vice presidents of the Commission, including High Representative Borrell, 6 now, 6 commissioners have come to China. And we have had, for the first time in 5 years, the first in-person EU-China summit. So the re-engagement, the resumption of dialogues is there. And we had even resumed a very difficult dialogue we have with the Chinese, which is the human rights dialogue. We are now waiting for the response. It's taking time because we want to have our second. We had the first one 17th of February last year. Now we are waiting for the response to hold the second. So the problem is not that we are not holding dialogues. We have had, apart from the summit, high-level dialogues on climate and environment, on economy and trade, on energy, on so many things. But especially the one, and with the very important strategic dialogue where we have talked about things like Ukraine, for instance. But when it comes to trade, to our competitive part of or facet of our relations, I must say that we have talked a lot, but there is no progress. And this is very concerning. We have told the Chinese that we need to talk less and have more progress. We need to walk the talk. We I mean, the European Union Chamber of Commerce in 2022 listed 967 market access barriers that our companies face in China. In 2023, the number had gone up to 1,058. And we can see barriers, new barriers erecting every week now. I mean, it is an unbalanced relation, as you said very well. In 2022, we broke all historical records, Guinness Book of Records of trade imbalance. Never had there been a larger trade deficit between two trade powers like we did have in 2022. And the bad news is that even if you say, and you're right, that the numbers in value are lower in 2023, the fact is that in volume, the imbalance has grown. We have the numbers. Now we are approaching one container going from China, from Europe to China, and 4 coming back full. In 2022, there were 3.2 to 1 was the ratio. Now it's almost 4. So because of the Chinese overcapacity and the subsidization and all, and the lack of demand in China, China is sending even more goods to Europe and receiving less, except for a couple of months this year. But the trade deficit in terms of volume is getting worse. And it's not just because Chinese products are very competitive and good quality, which is true. It is because our companies face enormous trade market access barriers. There is no level playing field, and we've been complaining about that. And that's why, after complaining for 1 year, we're talking for over a year now, the European Commission is taking actions. All these investigations respond to a lack of progress and respond to objective things. That's why these investigations are fact-based. They will be WTO compatible, and we'll see how it ends. But the thing, and we are telling our Chinese friends that we need to see progress. There are so many things where we see no progress that it's really concerning.
From more political perspective, from the more political point of view, one of the problems we face as Europeans when we deal with the Chinese is internal divisions that separate the member states' positions on trade, on human rights, on many issues. So it's not the same. The Germany's perspective and with this particular interest in the vehicles and automotive industry and exports and etc. than, for example, the Central European member states or the Nordics, etc. So, as ambassador there in Beijing, what's your perception on this with your colleagues? Do you see the Europeans much divided? What is your task to gather together a common ground and among the member states on the key issues? So what's your task there? It's a tough one, I guess.
No, it's not. It's not. Since I arrived, I've seen pretty good unity among the member states here. Of course, there are differences sometimes in this or that, but I think the Chinese position on the Russian aggression on Ukraine was definite. Central and some member states who are, let's say, closer to China really saw that as a red line, and it was perfectly reflected in our unity here. So there are some exceptions in some cases, but my impression is that European Union unity here has never been better. In fact, our description of China as a partner, as a competitor, and as a rival was approved by the European Council, remember, in 2019, and it has not changed. And so have so many things with China. But in 2022, the Russian aggression of Ukraine reinforced that. And now I must say that I'm quite happy with the unity we have here. Of course, we on very specific measures like tariffs for cars and all, maybe we don't see eye to eye, but the proposal is in the hands of the Commission, and we'll see what happens. I can't hear you.
Let's turn now to another issue, which is related to the relationship between the European Union and China. Let's say this is a collateral, more broader geopolitical perspective, which is the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy, which was released in 2021 by the High Representative and the Commission, a joint communication. It has become one of the pillars of our action for the entire region. And my question for you, Ambassador, is how compatible is this strategy with the bilateral relations with China? Because one of the things that have been said many times about this is that this was to be a kind of a strategy for containing China's ambition in the Pacific, in the South China Sea, vis-a-vis the Taiwan Strait, and all this. Also, to counterbalance the Chinese vis-a-vis India and many other countries. So, what kind of, again, the complementarity is there here? And another question related to this is how much this strategy has delivered so far, because we don't see much outcomes there. We see many bad words about the commitment of the European countries on the maritime security in the Pacific and the Indo-Pacific area, etc. But we don't see much facts, and we rather see divisions on between member states. Let's take France, Macron's France, and others. How do you assess this strategy, and what do you make it of it vis-a-vis China?
Again, well, first of all, this Indo-Pacific strategy is again. It has been agreed by 27 member states in the European Council, so I don't see too many divisions. We all agree on that. The intent of the Indo-Pacific strategy has nothing to do with any kind of containment policy against China. I mean, when I say we, I mean the European Union and the leaders of the European Union, both the President of the European Council, the President of the Commission, the High Representative, have said and repeated many times when asked that we have no intention of implementing any kind of containment strategy with China. So this is not something we are doing, and the Indo-Pacific strategy is not about that at all. It is about fundamentalist interests of the European Union. We have to have an Indo-Pacific strategy because the Indo-Pacific is the pole where the growth of the economy is concentrating. So 40% of our trade, of EU's trade, goes through the Taiwan Strait, for instance. But and I would say that more than 50% is originated or has as destination the Indo-Pacific. One of the member states, France, is an Indo-Pacific power too. I mean, how can we not have an Indo-Pacific strategy? We have had deliveries. We have organized already, I think, 2 or 3 Indo-Pacific ministerial conferences with the participation of ministers of the Indo Pacific region and European foreign ministers. I mean, it is not a strategy to get particular outcomes, but it is a strategy to put a framework on the relation, the intense relation that we must have with the countries of these regions. So I think that it is not a strategy that has exhausted itself at all. It has just started, but I think we need this kind of framework to be an actor in this region too, although we are not part of the region except for one member state, but we have absolute right and extremely important interests in this region.
Well, very soon we'll have the European elections in June to the European Parliament, and also the US elections in November this year. So the so-called strategic autonomy, the need for Europe to lower its dependence on the United States on the one hand and on China on the other, is back to the fore. Is in the forefront of our discourse and debate, public debate. How important is for the Chinese this so-called open strategic autonomy? Are they? What's your perception, Jorge? Do you think that they take it seriously, or are they still playing or the divide and rule game with the Europeans? Because again, there's much rhetoric on the Chinese side on this. They applaud the strategic autonomy, but the truth is that we still don't know what it really means, what it's gonna mean in the foreseeable future.
Strategic autonomy is one of the favorite subjects and favorite concepts of the Chinese when they talk about Europe, or when they talk with us. When they always pitch strategic autonomy on us, I suppose, but because basically they want to separate us from the US. But I always respond when I'm told, and I'm told many times by the Chinese authorities here about the need for strategic autonomy, first of all, that we need strategic autonomy to start with, to define our strategic autonomy. We don't need to be told by the Chinese or by anybody what our strategic autonomy means. So let us be strategically autonomous to define what we mean it. Second, that we are in the process of defining it. This is not something that has been defined. We are defining it every day and depending on the circumstances. So this is a process that had started a long time ago, in fact, and it will evolve when the circumstances will evolve, and we'll see who wins in the US, and we'll see what happens with the European elections at all. But this is the third thing I say, by the way, is that, you know, we have an existential crisis in Europe because of the Russian aggression on Ukraine. And when it happened, and we looked around, we saw that the US, the United States, was immediately willing to help in this existential crisis, and for the third time in over a century, to help us. When we looked at China, we didn't have the same feeling. China is not helping enough, at least. China has not caused this crisis, but China has not condemned this blatant violation of the basic principles of international law of the UN Charter. When I say this blatant violation, you can say that the United Nations and the UN Charter was created to avoid this kind of aggression. And we don't understand how China has not condemned it, because China says it is a defender of the UN and of the UN Charter.
Yes, indeed, this is indeed one of the tough questions, and that separate us, the Europeans and the Chinese, or the Westerns and the Chinese right now. But we'll see how the peace negotiations thing evolves, or if there will be something like a move, global move towards peace in the coming months and years. We are finishing this conversation, Ambassador. I cannot help asking you about two things. One is going back to the bilateral relation, the economic bilateral relation, EU-China. Are you optimist or pessimist about the possibility of coming back to this comprehensive agreement on investment, which was stopped, if I remember well, 2021, for various reasons that we don't have much time to develop now. But this was supposed to be one of the pieces of the pillars of the new relationship between China and the Europeans, having a comprehensive investment agreement which conveys reciprocity, mutual trust, etc. What's the political climate on this? What's your perception, Ambassador, on this? Do you think that is it worth taking back to this dossier, or is it definitely over for the next months and years? What do you think?
Well, the bad news is that I'm not optimistic. You know, the ratification by the European Parliament of this agreement was made impossible when China responded to our very targeted sanctions because of Xinjiang issue with huge sanctions, including sanctioning the Human Rights Committee of the European Parliament. So there is no way you can have the European Parliament ratifying this agreement with China. And then we have to see, the second thing is that, well, probably the good news is that most of what is in this, if not all, what is in this agreement could be put into place without the need of its formal ratification. I don't think we need that now. I don't think the times right now are ripe for this, and it will be impossible because the European Parliament, I don't think the European Parliament would be prepared to ratify it right now when it is under sanctions by China. But then the problem is not the measures that are there that could be put in place by China easily, and even by us easily without the need for a treaty. The problem is that what we're seeing here is that the situation is not progressing in the right direction when it comes to market access barriers and to problems that we have. But so let's say we have to make sure that we have progress, and we have to convince our Chinese friends that our competitive relationship can be better. Otherwise, we will have to take measures because this is not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just let me to finish. Just last but not least, the question for Taiwan. Yeah. And no, I'm just would like to ask you about this because, as you know, France President Macron said that the European Union should not be caught in crisis, that's not ours. referring to Taiwan crisis. And so my question is, again, we are supposed to have Indo-Pacific strategy. We are supposed to have good relations and respect one single country, one country policy of China vis-a-vis Taiwan. But again, is the European Union ready for managing a crisis which eventually could emerge in the Taiwan Strait, confrontation between the United States and China? What happens if that quickly escalates into a big conflict? Are we ready? What will happen if in that black scenario where now there's a power vacuum by the EU in the region? What will be the consequences, and what can we do now?
Well, this is an extremely sensitive subject. So first of all, I will not comment on the President of France statements that he made when he came here, and I will not, especially about Taiwan, respond about hypothetical questions. This is not. We have the European Union one China policy, and it was debated and it was decided a long time ago, and it hasn't changed at all. May I sum it up saying that we recognize the government of People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China. At the same time, we pursue friendly relations and close
I think we lost this.
In the absence of diplomatic recognition, without any implication of diplomatic recognition. We recognize that Taiwan's governance is democratic and pluralistic, based on the rule of law and the respect for human rights. So these are values that we share.
Mm-hmm.
Our relations with Taiwan remain excellent, and we will continue to have this kind of relation which don't entail any recognition of sovereignty or anything like this. But we also encourage peaceful resolution of cross-strait issues. We are against any unilateral change of the status quo, especially by force or coercion. And when there are tensions, we are concerned. We have many interests in the peaceful and stable region. So that's it, and I will not move from there.
Okay, so we come to the end of this interview, this conversation with Jorge Toledo, European Union's ambassador to China. Thank you very much for joining us today from Beijing. We look forward to having you soon back to Madrid to give us more insights on the difficult times you are witnessing there in Beijing and Brussels and all over the Asia and the world. Thank you very much, Jorge, hasta pronto.
All right. Very glad to have been with you, Vicente, and I'll be very glad also to meet you when I'm in Madrid. Goodbye.